The year was 2458, and humanity was on the verge of a new era. For centuries, they had struggled to make a name for themselves among the galaxy's more advanced species, but all of that was about to change. The project that had been quietly in the works for decades was finally ready for its unveiling: the Leviathan. The Leviathan wasn't just any warship. It was the ultimate weapon, a culmination of humanity's greatest scientific minds and military engineers. For years, humanity had been studying the most powerful ships of the galaxy, reverse engineering technology, and integrating their own innovations into a design that would not just match, but exceed, anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Leviathan was more than a ship. It was a fortress that could travel through space with unmatched speed and firepower. At its heart was the AI, a sentient program called Aegis, capable of making decisions faster than any human commander could dream of. Its weapons systems could adapt to any enemy attack, learning from each battle to become even more deadly. Its shields were made from a rare alien material capable of absorbing energy blasts, rendering it nearly impervious to most forms of attack. The Leviathan's size alone was a sight to behold. Massive, dwarfing anything the galaxy had ever encountered. It was humanity's answer to the deep-rooted fear that they had always been seen as a weak species, unworthy of respect. Captain Eric Draven was chosen to lead the Leviathan. He wasn't the typical military commander. Draven had always been known for his unconventional tactics, his ability to think several moves ahead in any conflict. He had a reputation for being ruthless when necessary, but also deeply protective of his crew. He had trained for years for this moment, knowing full well that the power of the Leviathan would bring not just glory, but a host of challenges. As he stood on the bridge of the Leviathan for the first time, looking out at the stars through the massive view screen, he couldn't help but feel the weight of what he now commanded. "Captain, the Leviathan is ready for its first mission," said Lieutenant Lena Hartley, his second in command, as she looked over the ship's systems. Her voice was calm, but even she couldn't hide the excitement beneath it. After years of preparation, they were finally ready to test the Leviathan in real combat. The mission seemed simple at first: a patrol along the outer rim of the human colonies. There had been reports of pirate activity in the area, and the High Command had deemed it necessary to send a demonstration of humanity's newfound strength. It was supposed to be a routine mission, nothing more. Draven was skeptical about the simplicity of it, but he didn't voice his concerns. He knew better than to underestimate anything in deep space. As the Leviathan cruised through the dark expanse of the rim, they encountered the pirate fleet sooner than expected. It was a ragtag collection of ships, cobbled together from various sources, dangerous, but not powerful enough to threaten the might of the Leviathan. The pirate leader, a ruthless warlord named Talon, sent a warning across the comms, challenging the humans to retreat before things got messy. Draven's eyes narrowed as he listened to the transmission. The pirates had no idea what they were up against. "Prepare to engage," Draven ordered. "Give them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, we make it quick." The response was exactly what Draven expected. The pirates refused, confident that their numbers would be enough to overcome whatever humanity threw at them. "Let's show them what humanity can do," Draven muttered under his breath, a grim smile crossing his face. The Leviathan's cannons roared to life, each shot tearing through the pirate ships with surgical precision. The battle didn't last more than 5 minutes. In that brief span of time, the Leviathan turned the pirate fleet into space debris. It was over. But the destruction had just begun. As Draven looked out at the wreckage, he realized that this would be the moment the galaxy would never forget. The moment humanity proved it was no longer a footnote in the annals of space history, and for better or worse, they would never be the same again. The news of the Leviathan's victory spread like wildfire across the galaxy. What was supposed to be a simple patrol mission had become the most talked-about event in decades. The destruction of the pirate fleet was just the beginning. The sheer power of humanity's new warship left the galaxy's most advanced species in shock. In the core worlds of the Galactic Alliance, Officials scrambled to understand what had just happened. The Galactic Alliance had always seen humanity as a young, developing species, still struggling to find its place among the stars. While humanity had made notable advancements in technology and military strategy, no one had ever anticipated something like the Leviathan. For centuries, the Alliance had worked hard to maintain peace and balance, carefully ensuring that no one species became too powerful. Now the balance was shattered. Council meetings were hastily convened, and discussions on the future of humanity quickly escalated. The Alliance had long prided itself on being the diplomatic body that promoted peace, but now there was a new question. Was humanity a threat to that peace? It wasn't just the power of the Leviathan that frightened the Alliance. It was the potential. The ship was equipped with technologies that, to their knowledge, no other species possessed. Its ability to adapt to any weapon or strategy made it nearly unstoppable. For the first time, the Alliance realized that humanity had something that could not only compete with, but potentially surpass their most advanced fleets. How did they build this? Asked President Voritalis of the Phyrexi, her voice laced with worry, as she looked at the latest intelligence reports. We've been monitoring human developments, and nothing in their arsenal suggested this kind of ship. Her colleague, Jarek of the Quathar, nodded solemnly. The question isn't how they built it, but whether we can stop them if we need to. The power this ship possesses is unlike anything we've seen before. Whispers of fear turned to open discussions about what actions the Galactic Council should take. Some members called for an immediate response, advocating for diplomacy and sanctions to force humanity to abandon the Leviathan. Others argued that a more direct approach, demands for disarmament and the surrender of the warship, was necessary. The fact that a single human ship could destroy an entire pirate fleet without breaking a sweat sent chills through the heart of every council member. The response from humanity was swift, and it took many by surprise. Despite the gravity of the situation, the leaders of the United Human Federation were adamant. They had developed the Leviathan as a symbol of their strength and a means to protect their colonies, but they had never intended for it to spark galactic conflict. The Leviathan was built to protect our people, not to dominate the galaxy, declared Admiral Ian Holt, the Federation's lead military strategist. We will not stand down, but we do not seek war with the Alliance. We've made a grave mistake by not consulting you first, and we're willing to negotiate. But the damage had already been done. The Federation's offer of diplomacy was quickly overshadowed by the growing fear among the Alliance's more powerful members. Even if the humans didn't intend to conquer, the Leviathan's power made that possibility too real to ignore. And in the eyes of many, it wasn't about trust, it was about control. Back in the human colonies, reactions were mixed. Some celebrated the Leviathan's success, seeing it as a turning point for humanity. The idea that they no longer had to fear alien fleets or face extinction at the hands of hostile forces was exhilarating. But others, more pragmatic voices within the Federation, warned of the inevitable backlash. If the galaxy feared the Leviathan, the Federation would have to make hard decisions that might come at a steep cost. Captain Eric Draven, now recognized as the captain of the most powerful ship in existence, found himself in a precarious position. His orders had been clear: protect humanity at all costs. But with the entire galaxy now watching, and every action scrutinized, he felt the weight of the responsibility more than ever. He stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, staring out into the cold expanse of space, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. There was no going back. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, and it would never be the same again. The unexpected fallout from the Leviathan's debut was only just beginning to unfold. As discussions within the Galactic Council grew heated, Captain Eric Draven and his crew were thrust into the center of a brewing storm. What had started as a mission to secure peace had quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. Draven had always been a pragmatic leader, and though he felt the weight of the growing tension, his duty was clear. He had to carry out the mission at hand. But the mission was not as straightforward as it seemed. A few weeks after the destruction of the pirate fleet, Captain Draven and the Leviathan were assigned a more delicate task: a diplomatic mediation between the human colonies and the Xal'Reth, a reptilian species with a long history of territorial disputes. For years, tensions had simmered at the edge of human space, where the Xal'Reth had claimed several resource-rich planets, recently discovered by human explorers. It was a dispute that had remained on the verge of war, but had never escalated into open conflict. The mission seemed like an opportunity to prove that humanity was still capable of diplomacy. The Galactic Alliance had urged restraint and offered their support, hoping to avoid another catastrophe like the one with the pirates. Draven's orders were clear: negotiate with the Xal'Reth leadership, de-escalate tensions, and prevent war. Draven was hopeful, at least at first. He knew that his experience could bring about a peaceful resolution, if given the chance. The Leviathan was not to be deployed unless absolutely necessary. Its sheer presence could make negotiations more difficult. But as the ship entered the Xal'Reth system, the tension in the air was palpable. The Xal'Reth had long been known for their aggression and fierce warrior culture. They didn't negotiate. They conquered. Upon arrival, the human delegation was greeted with a formal reception. The Xal'Reth leader, High Warlord Talzar, had prepared an elegant display of hospitality. But the political tension was obvious. Talzar's eyes glinted with distrust, his every word carrying a hidden threat. The negotiations began under a fragile guise of civility, but it didn't take long for things to sour. The resources on these planets are rightfully ours, Talzar growled, his words dripping with disdain. Human colonists encroach on our territory, and we will not stand for it any longer. You humans have a habit of taking what isn't yours. Captain Draven's voice remained steady. We only wish to settle this peacefully. The colonies are growing, but we do not seek war with the Xal'Reth. At that moment, a Xal'Reth warship appeared on the outer perimeter of the human fleet. It was no coincidence. The message was clear. Negotiations had failed before they had even begun. The Xal'Reth had no intention of compromising. Talzar's words confirmed it. Then perhaps you will reconsider your position when we show you the might of the Xal'Reth, Talzar said coldly. Before Draven could respond, the Xal'Reth opened fire, catching the human fleet off guard. The attack was swift, coordinated, and brutal. Pirate raids had been one thing, but this was an organized assault. In a matter of seconds, several human ships were destroyed, their debris scattered across the stars. The Xal'Reth had intended to break the peace by force, and it seemed they had succeeded. Draven's heart raced. He had not come here for war, but the situation was spiraling out of control. It wasn't a mere skirmish anymore. His orders had been clear: resolve the situation without violence. Yet, as his hand hovered over the communication panel, he knew the reality. There was only one response that Xal'Reth would understand. Deploy the Leviathan, Draven ordered, his voice cold and resolute. In the blink of an eye, the Leviathan's enormous form emerged from behind the human fleet, its weapon systems powered up and ready. The sight of the warship was enough to freeze everyone in their tracks. The Xal'Reth, who had hoped to intimidate the human fleet into submission, now found themselves staring down the true might of humanity's weapon. The battle that followed was over before it even started. The Leviathan, with its overwhelming power, wiped out the Xal'Reth fleet in minutes. Every shot from its weapons was precise, devastating. The Xal'Reth didn't stand a chance. As the last of their ships were reduced to floating debris, Captain Draven stood at the helm, his expression unreadable. He had done what was necessary to defend humanity, but at what cost? The battle may have been over, but the consequences were just beginning. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. As the Leviathan turned back toward the human colonies, Draven knew that a new chapter in galactic history had begun, and it would be one written in the ashes of war. In the aftermath of the destruction of the Xal'Reth fleet, Captain Eric Draven knew that their mission, once seen as a potential diplomatic success, had spiraled into a nightmare. The human colonies had suffered minimal casualties, but the message had been loud and clear. Humanity was capable of terrifying power. The Leviathan, a ship built for peace, had been used as an instrument of destruction. And now, the consequences were inevitable. News of the battle spread across the galaxy, reaching every corner of the Galactic Alliance. The destruction of the Xalreth fleet at the hands of humanity's warships sent shockwaves through the political landscape. It wasn't just the military might that worried the Alliance. It was the unthinkable potential the Leviathan represented. A weapon capable of turning the tide of any conflict. A ship so powerful that no other species could challenge it. And in the eyes of many, that was a threat to the very fabric of galactic peace. The Galactic Council quickly convened a special session, one that had been decades in the making. The discussions were tense, filled with fear, anger, and mistrust. The members of the Council, representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy, had always maintained an uneasy balance of power. The threat of war had always been a distant possibility. But now, with humanity's sudden rise to power, that balance was in jeopardy. The Leviathan had tipped the scales. President Voritalis, the Feruxi leader, stood at the head of the council, her face set in grim determination. This ship, the Leviathan, is an unprecedented weapon, she began, her voice carrying the weight of authority. The destruction of an entire fleet in minutes is not a victory. It is a declaration of war. We cannot allow humanity to possess such power without oversight. If this continues, the very principles of peace we've worked for will be shattered. The tension in the room was palpable. Representatives from the Quathar, the Umeri, and the Vadrani species all voiced similar concerns. The Quathar's leader, Jarek, was the first to speak after President Talis, his voice a low growl. Humanity has shown that they are capable of unimaginable destruction. Their actions have proven they cannot be trusted with such power. The Leviathan must be neutralized, and humanity must be prevented from ever deploying it again. Across the room, the Imeri representative, Arandis, leaned forward, her sharp features etched with worry. If we allow this to continue, we risk every species in the galaxy. Humanity may claim to seek peace, but they've already shown their willingness to use their ship against those who don't agree with them. How can we trust them? The debate raged on for hours. Some members argued that humanity should be given a chance to prove they were not a threat, to remove the Leviathan from active duty and place it under strict supervision. Others, however, were resolute. The weapon was too dangerous, and humanity should be barred from using it permanently. The Alliance could not risk allowing one species to wield such unrestrained power. In the end, the Council voted overwhelmingly in favor of a ban on the Leviathan. The resolution was clear. The warship would be retired, and humanity would be prohibited from deploying it in any conflict, under threat of galactic sanctions and possible military action. The decision was made. The Leviathan was too powerful, too dangerous, and could not be allowed to continue as humanity's military advantage. The Federation's representatives fought fiercely against the ban. Admiral Ian Holt, a key leader of the human delegation, was livid. You cannot take our right to defend ourselves. The Leviathan is a deterrent, not a weapon of conquest. We need it to protect our people, our colonies. If we are to survive in this galaxy, we cannot disarm ourselves. But his protests were ignored. The political tide had turned, and humanity's once promising future among the stars had just been clouded by suspicion and distrust. The humans were given one choice: comply with the ban or face isolation from the galactic community. Captain Draven sat in the command chair of the Leviathan, staring out into the cold expanse of space as the decision reverberated through the Federation. The words of the Council echoed in his mind. The ship must be retired. The mission he had once believed would bring peace had only served to ignite fears and anger. What had started as an attempt to protect humanity had ended with the galaxy turning its back on them. The Leviathan was ordered to dock in a secure facility on Earth's moon, its weapons deactivated and its systems locked down. The crew was disbanded, scattered across other missions, while Draven was left to reflect on what could have been. But the seeds of resistance had been sown. Even as the ban was enforced, whispers began to spread among the ranks of the Federation. The Leviathan was too powerful to remain silent. The galaxy may have rejected humanity's might, but there were some who believed that the fight for their place in the stars had only just begun. The ban on the Leviathan had struck humanity like a hammer falling on a fragile piece of glass. The once proud Federation now stood at a crossroads, its strength and military power stripped away in a single vote by the Galactic Council. While most of the human populace supported peace and diplomacy, many couldn't ignore the glaring reality. Without the Leviathan, humanity was at a distinct disadvantage in the ever-dangerous galaxy. Captain Eric Draven found himself in the heart of the storm, torn between his duty to the Federation and his unwavering loyalty to the crew of the Leviathan. As the ship sat in cold storage on Earth's moon, Draven spent his days in a state of restless uncertainty. He couldn't escape the feeling that the Federation, by agreeing to the ban, had set a dangerous precedent. The Leviathan wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of humanity's newfound strength. Taking it away had sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity could be subdued, its power taken away. Draven wasn't one to back down from a fight, and he knew that many of his fellow officers shared his growing concerns. Meanwhile, in the shadowy corridors of the Federation's government, a movement was slowly beginning to take shape. It wasn't an organized rebellion, not yet, but there were whispers, quiet conversations between military officers, politicians, and civilians who believed that the Federation had made a grave mistake. The Leviathan was humanity's key to survival, and without it, they would remain nothing more than a small, vulnerable species in the vast expanse of space. Admiral Ian Holt, who had fought vehemently for the Leviathan's freedom, was at the center of the movement. His frustration with the Council's decision was no secret. Holt had spent years building the Federation's military force, and now it was all for nothing. The ban on the Leviathan left humanity weak, and he couldn't stand the thought of sitting idly by as other, more powerful species plotted their next moves. "I can't believe we're allowing them to do this," Holt said one evening, pacing back and forth in his private quarters. Draven, who had become a close confidant of Holt's during the post-ban period, watched him with a mixture of concern and understanding. "There's nothing we can do. The Council's decision is final," Draven said, his tone filled with quiet resignation. "The galaxy has spoken. We either comply or face the consequences." Holt stopped pacing, his gaze hardening. "You're wrong. We can't just comply. Not after everything we've built. Not after everything we've sacrificed." The words hit Draven harder than he expected. He'd spent days trying to convince himself that the ban was necessary, that the galaxy's fears of the Leviathan were just. But deep down, he felt the same unease Holt did. They were being pushed into a corner, isolated and vulnerable, and they had no intention of staying there. "What are you suggesting?" Draven asked quietly. "We take it back," Holt said firmly. "We take back the Leviathan. We won't just give it up and hide away in our corner of the galaxy. The Federation's given up, but not all of us have. If we want humanity's place in the stars, we have to fight for it." Draven's mind raced. Holt's words were dangerous, but they also rang with the truth. The Leviathan represented more than just military power. It was the future of humanity, a symbol that they could stand shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's most advanced species. Could they really abandon it? Was it possible to live without the ship that had come to define them? "We'll need allies," Draven said, his voice contemplative. "If we're going to do this, we can't afford to fight alone." Holt nodded. "I've already started reaching out to people who feel the same way we do. There are others, military leaders, influential voices who can rally support for this cause. We'll need to be discreet, but the time will come when we'll have to act. The Leviathan can't be locked away forever." The decision was made. They would not accept the Council's ban. They would not let the Leviathan be buried and forgotten. With Holt's growing network of supporters and Draven's leadership, they would find a way to take back the ship, and with it, humanity's place in the galaxy. But as the movement grew, so did the risks. They had chosen a path that would put them at odds with not only the Galactic Alliance, but also their own Federation. If their plan failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. But Draven couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's future depended on the path they had chosen. The Leviathan would be the key to humanity's survival, whether the galaxy liked it or not. The plan was in motion, but with every step taken, Captain Eric Draven felt the weight of the consequences pressing heavier on his shoulders. What had started as a rebellion in whispers now grew into something far larger, more dangerous. Holt's network had expanded rapidly, and people from all walks of life, military officers, engineers, even some high-ranking officials, joined the cause, all united by the same belief. Humanity could not, and should not, back down from its place in the galaxy. As they gathered their forces and resources, Draven and Holt knew that reclaiming the Leviathan wouldn't be as simple as taking it back from its dock on Earth's moon. The Federation was already on high alert. The Council had made it clear that any attempt to liberate the Leviathan would be met with military force. The Federation's fleet was formidable, and Draven's crew was scattered, many of them assigned to other ships or ground-based duties in the wake of the ban. But as the rebellion began to take shape, a new problem emerged. The Federation wasn't the only one watching. The alien species that had once feared humanity's new strength now saw an opportunity. They had been waiting for a weakness to exploit, a moment when humanity's unity would falter. And now, they sensed the cracks. The first sign came when Draven received an encrypted message, coded in a way only a select few could decipher. The message was brief, but its implications were chilling. The Zoreth are moving. The Zoreth were a brutal, expansionist race known for their relentless conquests and their desire to control entire sectors of space. They had been observing humanity's rise with quiet interest, but this was the first time they had made a move. The message suggested they were preparing to strike against the human colonies on the Outer Rim, taking advantage of the Federation's distraction with the Leviathan's rebellion. It wasn't just a random attack. The Zoreth were smart, calculating. They knew that the Federation's forces were stretched thin, and with the Leviathan no longer in play, humanity's defenses were significantly weakened. Draven's mind raced as he sat in the quiet briefing room aboard one of the ships supporting the rebellion. Holt stood across from him, watching him intently. "We can't let them hit us while we're divided," Draven said, pacing. "If the Zoreth strike first, it could set us back decades. We're not ready for a war with them." "We can't let them see our weakness either," Holt responded. "The rebellion must continue. But if the Zoreth move in, the colonies will be exposed. If we wait too long, we'll lose everything we're fighting for." There was no time to waste. The rebellion had already drawn the attention of the Federation's highest echelons, but now Draven was faced with a new dilemma. He couldn't let the Zoreth take advantage of the situation, not when humanity's future was at stake. "We have to act quickly," Draven said, his voice low and resolute. "We can't risk them striking the colonies. The Federation will be distracted by our rebellion, but we'll still need to defend the Outer Rim." Holt nodded. "We'll need to rally the forces we have. If we can stop the Zoreth, it'll buy us time. And if we're lucky, we'll catch the Federation off guard." Draven knew it was a gamble. With only a fraction of their former military strength, humanity was vulnerable. They couldn't afford to lose any more ground. The Zoreth were known for their relentless tactics. If they succeeded in their attack, humanity's colonies would be reduced to rubble before reinforcements could arrive. But there was one advantage they had: the Leviathan, still locked away and guarded on Earth's moon. The ship may have been banned, but it had never been destroyed. It was the one weapon humanity still had that could level the playing field. "Gather the forces we can," Draven said. "I'll go to Earth's moon myself. We take the Leviathan back, and we make a stand. For the colonies, for humanity. As Holt set to work organizing their forces, Draven's mind was already racing ahead. He knew this mission could determine the outcome of everything. If they succeeded in reclaiming the Leviathan, humanity would be able to defend itself, not just from the Federation, but from any external threat that dared to challenge them. But there was something else on Draven's mind. The Zoreth weren't the only ones keeping watch. The Federation would soon catch on to their plans, and with the rebellion's visibility increasing, their enemies, both human and alien, would stop at nothing to ensure that the Leviathan stayed out of their hands. The clock was ticking. Time was running out, and the future of humanity rested on a knife's edge. Draven was prepared to take the fight to the stars, no matter the cost. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the true enemy was still out there, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. The moment Captain Eric Draven boarded the ship bound for Earth's moon, he could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him. Holt's network had mobilized quickly, and the rebellion was beginning to take shape. But Draven knew that this was the moment of truth. There was no turning back now. The Leviathan was their last hope. Without it, humanity's future would be in jeopardy, and the Zoreth's imminent strike could destroy everything they had fought for. As the ship carrying Draven and a small crew of trusted officers approached Earth's moon, the gravity of the situation hit him. The Leviathan was locked away in a secure facility, surrounded by the best Federation security humanity had to offer. The plan was simple: get in, reclaim the Leviathan, and get out before the Federation even knew they had been there. But nothing was ever as simple as it seemed, especially when you were dealing with a ship that had the power to reshape the galaxy. "We're nearing the facility," Lieutenant Kara Voss, his second-in-command, said from her station on the bridge. "Security is tighter than we expected. The Federation has definitely upped its patrols since the ban was enacted." Draven nodded, his eyes narrowing, as he watched the facility grow larger on the view screen. "We'll have to move quickly. No mistakes. The last thing we need is for the Federation to realize we're here." The Leviathan's docking facility was a vast, reinforced structure on the far side of the moon, shielded from prying eyes. It was designed to keep the warship out of reach of anyone who might try to take it. But they had the advantage of surprise, and they would need every bit of it. As they approached the docking station, Draven gave the command to disengage the ship's stealth systems. "Engage silent mode. We need to blend in as much as possible. No alarms." The officers on board moved with practiced efficiency. The silent mode would cloak their presence, but it would only work for a limited time. The Leviathan was a massive ship, impossible to hide for long. Kara turned to Draven. "Once we're in position, we'll have about 10 minutes before Federation patrols come within range." The clock is ticking. Draven stood tall, his jaw set with determination. "Then let's make it count. This is our shot." With the stealth systems activated, the ship glided closer to the facility. Draven could feel the tension in the air, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the engines. The crew worked in unison, their eyes fixed on their monitors as the docking clamps came into view. "We're in," Kara said, her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation. "The Leviathan's dock is just ahead. We'll need to board and override the lock mechanism." Draven nodded. "Let's move." The team suited up in the standard Federation tactical gear, their faces grim. Every step they took brought them closer to the heart of their mission, and to the inevitable confrontation that awaited them once they unleashed the Leviathan. As they made their way through the secure corridors of the facility, Draven's mind raced. This was not just about reclaiming the ship, it was about sending a message. Humanity wasn't going to back down. They would fight for their place in the stars, whether the galaxy accepted it or not. When they reached the Leviathan's docking bay, the door was sealed tight. "Override the security codes," Draven ordered. Kara worked quickly, her fingers flying over the panel as she bypassed the facility's security systems, Sweat beaded on her forehead as the seconds ticked by. "Come on, come on." A soft beep sounded, and the heavy door slid open, revealing the Leviathan in all its glory. The massive warship loomed in the bay, its dark metallic surface gleaming in the dim light. For a moment, Draven stood there, taking in the sight of the ship that had become the symbol of humanity's strength. "We did it," Kara said, her voice filled with awe. But Draven didn't share her moment of triumph. He knew this was only the beginning. Now that they had the Leviathan, the real challenge awaited. The Federation wouldn't just sit back and let them walk away. "They know we're here," Draven said, his voice steely. "They've been watching. Get to the control room. We're taking the Leviathan back into space, and we're not stopping until we've made it clear that humanity is here to stay." As they made their way to the heart of the Leviathan, Draven couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Somewhere in the shadows, the Federation had to know what was happening. Time was running out. "Captain," Kara said, her voice suddenly tense. "The Zorath fleet. It's moving toward the outer rim. The attack is imminent." Draven's heart sank. The Zorath were already making their move. The clock wasn't just ticking on their escape, it was ticking on humanity's survival. They had to get the Leviathan operational and stop the Zorath before it was too late. Without hesitation, Draven gave the order. "Activate the Leviathan. We're going to war." The storm had begun, and there would be no turning back. The Leviathan's systems hummed to life, its powerful engines roaring as it slowly lifted from its dock on Earth's moon. Captain Eric Draven stood at the helm, his eyes locked on the view of the vast, silent expanse of space. The crew had worked quickly, overriding the Federation's shutdown protocols and bringing the ship back online. The ship's massive weapons were still locked, but the power was there. They had what they needed to make their stand. Kara Voss, his second in command, stood beside him, monitoring the readouts on the control panel. "We're clear of the dock," she said, "but we've only got a few minutes before the Federation notices. We need to move fast." Draven nodded, his mind focused on the mission ahead. The Federation had underestimated humanity's resolve, and now they were about to pay the price for it. They weren't just stealing a ship, they were reclaiming their destiny. The galaxy would understand that humanity wasn't to be pushed around. The Leviathan would show them that. But as the Leviathan soared through space, an urgent message blinked on Draven's screen. "Captain, it's the Zorath fleet," Kara said, her voice tense. "They've entered the outer rim. We don't have much time." Draven's heart raced. The Zorath had arrived ahead of schedule, their fleet looming like a storm cloud on the horizon. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. If they didn't stop the Zorath now, the outer colonies would fall, and humanity's foothold in the galaxy would be lost forever. "Set a course for the outer rim," Draven ordered. "We're heading straight for the Zorath fleet." The Leviathan responded instantly, its vast engines powering up as it made its way toward the conflict. The ship's systems were still unfamiliar to many of the crew, but they had no choice but to adapt quickly. Draven's crew had trained for this moment, though they hadn't expected it to come under such dire circumstances. As the Leviathan tore through space, the massive Zorath fleet came into view. The enemy ships were monstrous, their sleek, aggressive forms glistening in the cold light of distant stars. There was no time to negotiate. There was no room for mercy. "Captain," Kara said, her voice steady despite the urgency of the situation, "the Zorath are locking onto us. We'll be in range of their weapons in a matter of seconds." Draven took a deep breath, his mind sharp and clear. "Fire the primary weapons. Take out their lead ship." The Leviathan responded with a thunderous roar, unleashing a salvo of energy blasts that tore through the Zorath fleet. The lead ship disintegrated in an explosion of fiery debris, sending shockwaves through the rest of the fleet. The sheer power of the Leviathan's weapons was unmatched, and the Zorath, taken by surprise, hesitated for a moment. "We've got their attention," Kara said. But they're retaliating. Incoming fire. The Leviathan shook as energy blasts from the Zoreth fleet slammed into its shields. Draven gripped the controls, guiding the ship with precision as the enemy ships closed in. The ship's massive hull absorbed the hits, but the damage was starting to mount. The Zoreth weren't going down easily. "Return fire," Draven ordered, his voice calm despite the chaos. "Target their engines. We need to disable their fleet, not destroy them." As the Leviathan unleashed another round of devastating fire, the Zoreth fleet began to falter. Several ships were disabled, their engines crippled, leaving them floating helplessly in space. But there were more of them, and they were closing in fast. "We can't keep this up for much longer," Kara said, her voice strained. "We need reinforcements." Draven didn't answer immediately. He knew the odds were slim. Humanity's forces were scattered, and the Federation was still trying to figure out how to stop the rebellion. But Draven refused to back down. He wouldn't let humanity's future slip away because of a mistake made in a council chamber. The Leviathan was their weapon, their protector, and they would use it to hold their ground. "We don't need reinforcements," Draven said, his voice low but full of resolve. "We'll finish this ourselves." He locked his eyes onto the massive Zoreth command ship. If they could take down its central control systems, the rest of the fleet would crumble. The Leviathan powered forward, heading straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Weapons fire lashed out from all directions, but Draven's focus remained unwavering. "Prepare for a direct hit," Draven ordered. "All hands, brace for impact." The Leviathan surged forward, pushing through the enemy defenses. Its shields flared under the relentless barrage, but the ship held firm. They were closing in on the Zoreth command ship. Draven's heart pounded in his chest as he prepared for the final strike. "Now fire," Draven shouted. The Leviathan's weapons erupted in a concentrated beam of energy, slamming into the Zoreth command ship's central reactor. The ship buckled, its energy systems failing, and in a brilliant flash of light, the massive vessel exploded. The remaining Zoreth ships hesitated, their coordination broken. With their command ship gone, they began to retreat, their once imposing fleet now fragmented and disarrayed. Draven exhaled deeply, allowing himself a moment of relief. The battle wasn't over, but humanity had made its statement. The Leviathan had proven its worth. As the remaining Zoreth ships scattered into the void, Draven looked out at the stars, the future now uncertain but full of promise. Humanity's place in the galaxy had been secured. For now, the storm had passed, but the fight was far from over.